welcome to SGF Local Matters, a podcast about our beloved city of Springfield and the stories of the people who make it great. I'm your co-host, Cora Scott, and I'm the Director of Public Information and Civic Engagement for your local government, the city of Springfield. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing my co-host for this program, the Honorable Mayor of Springfield, Mayor Ken McClure.
Cora, it's always good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
We are so pleased today to be joined by a very special guest, one who's been such an advocate for our community, for our state, active over a period of decades. But he's an advertiser, he's a broadcaster, he's a performer, he's a teacher. Gary Ellison. Gary, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Cora. It's a pleasure to be potted by you all.
We're glad to have you here today.
Well, your career and your experiences and your contributions have just been so great over a period of years, and I don't know that we've got time to cover everything, but we want to talk about so many of your contributions, and I want to start with where you began, I think, really as a young man. You were involved in the Ozarks Jubilee, in much of that back in the 50s, and all of that it meant to our community. So talk a little bit about that as we get kicked off,
Well, the Ozarks
Gary.
Jubilee started in January of 1955 and ran through September of 1960. And then the following summer, we did a program called the 5-Star Jubilee. And I was only on the Jubilee for the last 2 years of the original show. I was the teenage square dance caller for the Wagon Wheelers.
Wow.
And it was an interesting experience. And the thing that I think has the most staying power about it is that it brought people from literally all over the United States to Springfield for music. And if you follow the history here, the Jubilee went off the air, the 5-Star Jubilee, in '61. That was the year that Branson sort of started. So people were coming to the Ozarks to hear country music performed live, and it started with the Jubilee, and then the Ball Knobbers started in Branson. Right after that, the Presley family, and then Branson took off. And so if it weren't for the Jubilee bringing people here, I don't know that Branson would have had the staying power that it did. And there's two more things. The writer for the Jubilee was a guy named Don Richardson. And when the Jubilee went off the air, the Hershon family hired Don to be their publicist. So the Jubilee went on to Silver Dollar City. And the art director for the Jubilee, Andy Miller, was the guy who designed Silver Dollar City. So the sets we had on the Jubilee, you can walk through now at Silver Dollar City because they had the same artist. So that there's a neat tie between the two towns.
That's neat. So what PR people may not realize, public relations people, is that Don Richardson was the OG. He was someone I looked up to as a young person, creating that whole environment for Silver Dollar City and what we know today.
He really got mad at me when I was the president of the Springfield Ad Club, and we had our first Addy Awards, and the board kept saying, we need to dress in tuxedos. So I said, all right, we'll dress in tuxedos. And Don Richardson thought that was absolutely the wrong thing to do in the Ozarks. And I don't know that he spoke to me after that.
Well, you had opportunity to be exposed to so many people through the Jubilee. And if you go back to KWTO and all of the performers on there, just an incredible heritage.
Well, it really was. And three quick things. I got to sit backstage in the boys' dressing room for an hour and listen to Chet Atkins practice. And I decided I'll go home and burn my guitar because there's no way I could ever do that. So that's one. And then the next to the last Jubilee, Mr. Foley was out of town, and they brought in as the host Gene Autry.
Wow.
And so I got to work with him, got his autograph on a record of Back in the Saddle Again, which I treasure. And then the Jubilee gave us an opportunity to talk to people literally all over the United States.
Tell us about the significance of the broadcast
Well,
of the
they
television
had
show.
almost 25 million regular viewers every week. And for all those years, and we had no summer reruns, we ran 12 months a year. And so you think about the exposure that Springfield, Missouri got because of that is just amazing.
So we could have been Music City.
Yeah. And there's still hard feelings between folks in Nashville and what we did here, unfortunately.
Interesting.
Well, your tie to Branson is really key, I think.
Yeah.
And what that became, you've been active in that over the years, and those groups down there that have such a strong heritage as you go down there.
Mhm.
And really, it gets into the tie between Springfield and Branson, and it's one of collaboration. What helps one helps the other.
Yes.
And I think the entertainment venues really, people come down here now, they want to go to Springfield, but they want to go to Branson.
Well, they do. And I hope that this goes back to my time with the Convention Visitors Bureau here in Springfield. But I hope that the powers that be behind the marketing of Branson realize the tie between the two towns and that we can work cooperatively together.
That music heritage, that I see that continuing today. I've interviewed several musicians and vocalists, even up through the 60s and 70s, where it
Mhm.
became known as the Springfield Sound. Do you still see that pervasive in Springfield's culture, that music heritage?
Oh, yeah. This year being the 50th anniversary of the Ozark Mountain Daredevils, and you have geniuses in this town like Nick Sibley, who you give Nick an instrument, he can play it, and I'm envious of that. He's remarkable.
Well, let's talk about, speaking of playing, your own playing experience.
All right.
You have had such a career with that. You were at one point the ragtime pianist of Missouri, an official designation. But how did you get started with the piano and all of your music contributions?
Well, I took piano lessons for 4 years from a guy named S.K. Grundy, who was the director of the Sweet Adelines Barbershop Quartet group here in Springfield. And he promised me two things. He said, you'll never have to play a scale, and you'll only get to play songs that you want to learn. And I would tell him what I wanted, and rather than buy a book and learn that way, he would sit there with manuscript paper and write out a lead sheet for me of a tune that I wanted to play next week. And that's how I learned to play. And I always enjoyed the fun and the rhythm of ragtime because it's fun music. And SK let me do, I think the second or third tune that he had me learn was 12th Street Rag, which is a wonderful song, has a Kansas City tie to it. When I found out that ragtime started in Missouri and had a real Missouri connection, I would tell stories. Talking is a lot easier than playing. And so I would tell the stories about who wrote the songs and what inspired them and that. And that sort of became the program that I do. And since it's centered around Missouri, the late State Senator Paul Bradshaw was a fan of ragtime. And he and I became friends. And so together we came up with the idea that Missouri needed an official ragtime piano player. And so he wrote the legislation and named me that and got it passed through the Senate. And then Kit Bond got on board and had me play some concerts at the governor's mansion. And so I've carried that banner for a lot of years.
A quick little story. You'll like this, Gary. We met when I was 7 years old. And I was in a dance recital for what was then known as the Walker School of the Dance,
Mm-hmm.
which had a presence, longtime vaudevillian family, performed in Vegas. So they've huge musical theater history. But you came and were gracious enough to participate in this recital at Central High School. And I came home from rehearsal and I told my dad, I said, there is a man in this show that is so good. I think he's gonna become famous. And my dad said, Cora, that's Missouri's official ragtime piano player. That's Gary Ellison. So I thought you were just a friend of Breb Walker's, but that made an impression on me. And I've loved ragtime ever since. You
Well,
can
it's
dance
just
to
fun
it.
music.
Well, I met you 50 years ago this year
Yeah.
in Senator Bradshaw's office. I was just starting my career as a young budget analyst with the Missouri Senate, and I was up in Senator Bradshaw's office in Jefferson City in the Capitol, and you were in there, and he introduced me to you,
Yeah.
and the title was the official ragtime pianist of the state. So we both go back a long time.
Well, we really do. And a little side thing on Brebner Walker. He had a daughter, Joyce Roberts. And when I was working PR for the Ballknobbers, we needed some help with staging. And so we hired Brebner Walker's daughter, Joyce, to be our choreographer.
I
And
remember that.
so all those ties, it's who you meet and who you keep up with, and it goes a long time.
That's right. I studied with Joyce many years, and of course, she was a instructor at Drury
Yes.
University for many years.
Well, Gary, some of the things that you've done, you've been on the Convention and Visitors Bureau, you've worked so hard with the Ad Club, you were on the Landmarks Board here locally. Give us some of your thoughts and experiences about those things, because all of those have helped play a role in what Springfield is and the image and the label that we want to have.
Thank you, Mayor. Two things. I was the president of the Landmarks Preservation Trust when we bought the Gilloy's Theater and saved it from the wrecking ball.
Oh, wow.
And I was sitting in the dilapidated lobby and signed the piece of paper saying we'd buy it and pay for it, and we had absolutely no money in the bank. It scared me to death, but we were able to persevere and raise the funds through the help of a lot of folks in Springfield, and I'm so proud of what the Gilloy's has become. Town wouldn't be the same without it. Every time I go down there, I swell up a little bit. Then the other one, in the early 70s, I had an opportunity to join the board of the Greater Ozarks Zoological Society, which was
That's a mouthful.
that's a
is.
mouthful. And I decided that wouldn't work. So we changed the name to Friends of the Zoo.
That's a lot more understandable.
Foz is much easier than the other name. And, at the time we got on board, there was feeling in the city government that maybe we ought to just close the zoo altogether. And I'm so happy that didn't happen and that the zoo has become a real showplace, not only for Springfield and the Ozarks, but also in the overall scheme of things with the National Conservation of Animal Groups. The zoo has really found a way to be involved with the species survival plan and all manner of organizations like that, and it's a credit to the community.
Well, thank you for your labor of love on both of those projects. I mean, that's two things I enjoy immensely. Of course, going to the Gilloy's for concerts and going to the zoo with families. So thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
And we just noted the longtime director of the zoo, Mike Crocker, been there 49 years, is retiring
He is.
Yes.
this summer. And much of that growth in the zoo and establishing it really with its strong local presence is due to him. But the Friends group at the zoos just plays such an important role. You see them many times. You see the impact of their work.
Sure.
And so a great local heritage, a great part of our community.
Gary, I see that you also had a USO show
Yeah.
that took you to South Vietnam in 67 and Korea in 68. Tell
Mhm.
us a little bit about that.
Well, this goes back to something that happened to me when I was in fourth grade. Like many kids, I got polio and couldn't pass the physical when I got older to get in the military. And so I kind of thought that we ought to do something to help. And Stuart Symington, who was the senior senator from the state of Missouri, right after World War II, he was the original Secretary of the Air Force. And he's the one who started Bob Hope entertaining the troops.
Wow.
And so I thought, well, I know I've met the senator. So I called his office and they set it up. And so the Gary Ellison show, me and 4 girls, including Leslie Fleener, who was Miss Missouri at the time, we went to Vietnam. We were supposed to go back to Vietnam the next year, and the Tet Offensive hit. It was too dangerous for civilians, so they sent us to Korea for 6 weeks. But that's how that came about.
That's exciting.
Every time we did a show in front of literally hundreds of thousands of GIs, we always ended the show saying, y'all come down to Springfield and we'll go fishing. And so I guess that's really the first time that I went out anywhere and tried to get people to come to the Ozarks.
That's a constant theme in your career and life, too, is getting
Yeah.
people to recognize what we have here. Tell us about your passion for tourism and why that's so important to you.
Well, it goes back to the Jubilee. During the summertime at the Jubilee, the Jewel Theater was not very large, and we would fill it up with people from all over the country. And there were so many people out the door and down to St. Louis Street and then east on St. Louis on the sidewalk that after the show was over, they would, in the summer, roll the cameras back, run that group of people that were in there out, and bring the next group in, and we'd do the show one more time. And that spoke to me as how much tourism means dollar-wise to the community.
And you spent time on the Convention and Visitors Bureau as well.
Yes. I was in college. I was a fraternity brother with a young man named Lee Ganaway, who became mayor.
One of my predecessors.
Yes.
A good man and a good friend.
And when Lee became mayor, I suggested to him that we ought to have a mayor's commission for travel and tourism. And he liked the idea, and he got a hold of John Q. and Johnny Morris and a bunch of other people. And we formed this commission, and we studied tourism. And out of that, I got to know Tracy Kimberlin very well. And he was then the chair of the Convention Visitors Bureau. So Lee appointed me to that board, and I served there for about 4 years, and then 2 years as president of that group, and got to really see what travel and tourism means to the Ozarks. And I've been an advocate ever since. And to keep plugging this, for the last 25 years, I've been a staff writer for Show Me Missouri magazine, which is a travel publication that has 25,000 paid subscribers of people who want to do tourism type things in Missouri. And so I've been writing. I've done over 40 stories on Springfield and the area in that period, which I appreciate the editor allowing me to do that.
The latest of which focuses on Buc-ee's, right?
Yeah, the latest one, the one that's out right now, is the story about Buc-ee's. And so you keep plugging when you can.
Gary, we're so proud here in this region to be a part of the honor flight of the Ozarks.
Yes.
And all that does, taking veterans, World War II, Korea and Vietnam, and really
Gulf
all those
War.
who have served to Washington. Talk about your involvement with that and really what the honor flight means, how we go about soliciting people that want to go, and really how impactful that is.
Well, this goes back to my USO days. That's how I got involved with honor flight. And it's a wonderful opportunity for people who have served in the military, and you have to have an honorable discharge and served either during World War II, Korea, Vietnam, or the Gulf War. You don't have to have gone overseas. And you simply go at no cost. We do not charge the veterans a penny to go on this trip. And we take them to Washington, and they get to see all of the memorials and the military installations there. It's a day-long killer. We
Sun up
leave,
to way past sundown.
yeah, we leaves the airport, wheels up about 5 a.m. and get back hopefully in time for the 10 o'clock news. But the veterans that go are really treated like the heroes that they are. And every one of them seems to really get a great lift out of going on an honor flight. And it's real simple. I'll get a plug in here. Go to honorflightoftheozarks.org, and you can download an application and mail it in and join us.
Mayor, you
I've
participate
had
in
an
that, right?
opportunity to go twice as a guardian. My late uncle was a World War II veteran serving in the South Pacific, and I accompanied him as a guardian. And then a few years later for a dear friend of mine who fought in Korea. And it was just so compelling to see the impact on those soldiers. And I particularly remember going to the Tomb of the Unknown, where many of them, including my uncle, were in wheelchairs at that time. But doing the changing of the guard, they said everyone should stand, but those in wheelchairs do not. But every one of those veterans in a wheelchair stood up.
Yeah.
And that was just so telling. And the other thing, they have a mail call in there where they people, family members, friends, and some that don't even have any acquaintance, but they'll give them mail at the end of the day on the way home, and it's just amazing. Many of them are moved to tears.
They are. And we're moved to tears watching them. We get to do something in October of this year. We get to actually participate in the laying of a wreath at the tomb.
Wow.
What an incredible.
And if you haven't been to the airport when these
Welcome
veterans
home.
return home, it is quite a moving experience.
It really
I
is.
encourage
And invite
anyone.
everybody to come. And there'll be a couple of thousand people out there yelling and screaming and cheering, and the band is playing, and it's really something.
Just the look on their faces says it all when they come in.
Particularly the Vietnam veterans who did not get a decent welcome home, and they do here.
Yeah. Well, we are close to wrapping up, and Gary, we always subject our guests to this list of quick fire questions. So just answer off the top of your head to the following questions. What is your favorite word?
Happy.
What is your least favorite?
No.
I agree with you on that. What sound or noise do you love?
Good music.
What sound or noise do you hate?
A really loud guitar solo done in a heavy metal style.
That's oddly specific, but I don't disagree with you. What makes you happy?
Seeing things go the way you planned it.
What ticks you off?
When you volunteer to do something and you don't do it, makes me mad.
And last but not least, what profession other than your own would you have liked to attempt?
Travel agent.
Oh, you'd be a very good
You would
travel
be
agent.
very good at that. Very good.
Yes. Well, thank you, Gary. We appreciate you sharing a little bit about your experiences. And of course, people can still read your writings in the magazine. And you're always promoting Springfield. I see you out and about and appreciate that. Mayor, anything last words
Well,
from
Gary,
you?
we're so pleased and honored to have you here today. And the experiences you've had over a number of years have just promoted tourism. They promoted the community. And to go back to your point, they have promoted happiness. And that's quite a tribute. So thank you so much for your
Thank
time
you.
and joining us.
Make sure you subscribe to SGF Local Matters wherever you get your podcasts.